You know what time it is. Here we go on another Sunday morning. MLK Day, by the way. Tomorrow's Martin Luther King Day. We need some good news and some unity right now as a country, but happy MLK Day. On another Sunday morning, it's just after 8 o'clock. If you haven't noticed by now, I'm Caleb Herring, and this is Out of Line. For those that are wondering, Brian is out of town on vacation, enjoying some well-earned time off, and honestly giving us a break from him while he's at it. It's kind of good not to have Brian here, right? No, I'm kidding. We miss Brian having fun out there in Costa Rica, eaten by a shark at this point, but we're here still, Sunday morning. If you're listening for the first time, we are live, same time every week on Fox Sports Radio 98.9 FM and 1340 AM, flagship of the Vegas Golden Knights. Today, like we have been for the past few weeks, we're at Kickers Gaming and Sports Bar at 931 Las Vegas Boulevard, just down the road from the old Cashman Field. Kickers has been our home, like I said, for the past few weeks, and will be our home for the foreseeable future while the studio's home base is in the middle of a COVID lockdown. So the studio is closed to us, but Kickers is open. It is open to you, the general public. Come on down. All the TV screens, the NFL Sunday Ticket, of course, right now the playoffs in full swing. This isn't a Packers bar, but if you're a Packers fan, I'll just say this. You'll enjoy this spot to come watch the championship run of the Green Bay Packers. Probably some exciting stuff going down here during those games. So come on down, join the show, hang out during the show, and some mimosas and Bloody Marys as drink specials going on during the show, and come down after for the games and enjoy some fandom, some fan support. Kickers does some really good things during the games. Like I said, all the TVs will be tuned in with volume on to enjoy the energy of watching NFL football. Of course, since Brian is not here, the show looks and sounds a little different. It's a little younger, I'll say that. But I'm in the captain's chair, which means co-hosting today's show is the intern.
What's going on, everybody? Good morning. We are here at Kickers. It's an awesome bar. They have lots of great beer options, stuff like that. I'll say that just real quick. And you can come check us out every Sunday.
That's right. Spencer is also our social media director and now has his own sports talk show, delivering sports Friday nights at 7 on KSHP, which is 1400 AM on your radio dial. So also joining us in studios, of course, is the WWE star in the making, Dino Damon Cotton, who is working the wheels and steels back in the studio. The show is also streaming on the LV Sports Network, and you can watch the show on Facebook Live. The page is called Out of Line. That's OUTTALINE, Out of Line. You can also follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at Out of Line Fox LV. That's at Out of Line. And since you are live, your calls and questions are welcome. The Fox Sports Residential Bancorp studio line is 702-876-1340.
Hi, this is Bubby, and it's time for What's on Tap.
That's right. What's on Tap is brought to you by title sponsor Residential Bancorp. Whether purchasing a new home or refinancing the home you already own, Residential Bancorp is the company to turn to for all your home financing. Residential, one neighborhood at a time. On tap, the Vegas Golden Knights start their fanless season the right way. In spite of only being 2 games in, the 2021 season has already been a historic one for the Knights. Find out why in just a bit. NBA action is well underway, but the action on the court has not been the story of the season so far. The end of an era and the beginning of a new one. We'll talk about the shift in power that has people thinking a championship is on the way to New York. No, Knicks fans, and we'll never be talking about you when we're talking about championships. The NFL playoffs are in full swing. The divisional round is halfway in the books, and both advancing teams have made history in their own way, while the teams that got sent packing, no pun intended, wish they had better luck. Find out why. Speaking of sent home packing, we'll finish things up with a look at the Raiders and how they've already started the offseason shakeups. Can they make the changes they need in the offseason? Do you trust that? Or are the Raiders just going to continue to be a middle-of-the-pack team? And, of course, our pick of the week segment, not too many games to pick from, just the 2 NFL games going today, the other half of the divisional round. we'll make those picks. I have been dominant this season, and I'm going to go ahead and toot my own horn. So I will continue that domination. Going to be kind of easy, though. The Chiefs are making it really easy for me. Spoiler alert, I'm picking the Chiefs. But all that and more coming up. Again, if you're downtown or in the Las Vegas area, come down and grab a bite at Kickers Las Vegas, the gaming and sports bar, 931 North Las Vegas Boulevard, just down the road from Cashville. We are here live 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then the games will be on later this afternoon as well. So come on down to Kickers Gaming and Sports and enjoy some NFL football. That's it for What's on Tap. Again, brought to you by our title sponsor, Residential Bank Corp. If you are looking to buy a home or refinance the home you currently own, choose a company you can trust. Residential Bank Corp, funding America one neighborhood at a time.
Hockey players, as you know, are warriors. They don't give up. They come to play every game.
It's time for Nightcap, a cupful of the Vegas Golden Knights. From highlights to interviews to special events, the puck starts here.
Does start here, and technically for the Vegas Golden Knights, the puck started on Thursday with a 5-2 win and a back-to-back kind of doubleheader. This weird, funky NHL scheduling where you're playing the same team basically 2 times in a row. But the Golden Knights start off with 2 wins in that back-to-back system, 5-2 on Thursday, and then won the second game, an overtime game, first overtime game of the season, 2-1. But the reason the Knights made history is not because they started 2-0. That's not really important in the grand scheme of things. But for the first time ever, somebody took the ice with a C on their jersey, and it was Mark Stone, who had 2 great games. He's had 2 great games so far. Scored a tying goal and assisted on the game, what turned out to be the tie-breaking goal in Game 1, and then assisted on the tying goal and the game-winning goal in the Golden Knights' overtime win over the Ducks. So I don't think it was a secret. We all anticipated that Mark Stone was worthy of wearing that C. History being made by him being the first Golden Knight to wear the C. Is he the most deserving Golden Knight of that C?
I mean, no player on the Golden Knights have had any juice like throughout the pitch. Well, juice is a weird word because we did go to the Stanley Cup Finals, but I'm talking about last year's playoff in particular. Shea Theodore a little more deserving, but I don't think he's kind of the leadership type. Person who should be the captain, of course, is Marc-Andre Fleury, but if he's not starting in goal every night, you're not going to put a C on his jersey.
Yeah, that's interesting because that dynamic of Marc-Andre Fleury obviously is a fan favorite here, so the fandom probably would totally be on board with Andre Fleury having the C on his jersey, and I think he does deserve it, like you said, for what he's done in these inaugural seasons for VGK. But like you said, not being the starter plays a role in this, right? I mean, you're not even the guy anymore. If the C had been determined 2 years ago, I think hands down, Marc-Andre Fleury is the captain. But Robin Lehner got to start the season. And I think, we'll have a 2-goalie system. It's already shown that Marc-Andre Fleury got the start in the second game, which he played lights out. He had 6 saves in the first period and was playing really great. So you see why the Golden Knights would lean on 2 goalies. But as far as getting that C, I think that hurts Marc-Andre Fleury's case. The team, however, I think will benefit from this. It's interesting to have this 2-goalie system. It's almost like a 2-quarterback system when we talk about like college football or something like that. But so far, it's worked out. 2-0, obviously, both goalies have played pretty well. Do you see this being kind of the narrative of the season for VGK?
Well, I mean, for sure, in the time being, there is going to be a 2-goalie system, but I really think that Fleury will find his way back as the starting goaltender full time.
Really?
By the middle of the season. I mean, well, first of all, Leonard doesn't have the greatest first game. I mean, they scored 2 goals really quickly there in the first period to tie the game up, and then Fleury obviously had an incredible game last night. The story going into the offseason, or I guess during training camp, was that Fleury looked like he was up to the challenge. He was ready to go for the season, looking to have that spot back that he loves. And I think this is very similar to the Aaron Rodgers situation that we see in Green Bay. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has the same season if Jordan Love doesn't get drafted. I really think it put a fire under him. And I don't know. I mean, I think Fleury could have predicted, obviously, that they were going to re-sign Leonard for the long term, but it still's got to hurt him. This guy's a competitor. He wants to win, and he's playing really good right now. Eventually, DeBoer is going to have to look at it, and DeBoer is a guy who will also not bow down. Like, if he's playing better than Leonard, he's going to put him in the goal because he thinks he's going to help the Golden Knights win the game.
So it's interesting when you bring it up because the dynamic I think is different. I think the ownership and the management outlook on this 2-goalie system is that it's sort of the passing of the torch. But the competitive aspect, when you're talking about DeBoer making the right decision to win and actually win games, do you think it's really going to be a fair competition as far as whoever's playing better is going to play? Or is it going to be one of those instances, one of the first we've had as Golden Knights fans, that management's going to say, no, we're moving forward. We're getting ready to deal Marc-Andre Fleury, whatever, get rid of that cap hit, whatever the case may be. You're going to play the guy that we brought in as the young up-and-coming guy.
Jeez, it sounds really familiar. You know, an NFL team has had a very similar situation this year. The Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa and Fitz. Now, it's not same because Leonard is a lot better than Tua is playing this season, obviously. So it's not an apple-to-apple comparison, but it is quite similar in the fact that you may have a veteran on the bench who's going to help this team win better right now as we speak. And whether or not management injects their personality into it and says you have to do this like the Miami Dolphins did, I doubt we'll see that with the Golden Knights, but you never know. I mean, they did just give them a big deal. They are over the cap right now since they didn't end up dealing Pacioretty. Money drives a lot of things, so this could be one of them.
Yeah, so they'll be continuing to see. They'll figure it out as things goes. Fortunately, right now, things are working out. They got 2 wins against the Ducks. They'll be in action again tomorrow against the Arizona Coyote. 4 games in a row against them, which is basically like a mini playoff series, which is just the way this whole divisional kind of system is going to work for the NHL for obvious reasons. Every sports league looks a little different, but 4 games in a row for the Golden Knights against the Arizona Coyote starting tomorrow on MLK Day. So it's weird because I can't get over looking at the schedule. Like when you're looking at the next few games on the schedule, you can't help but think this looks a lot like playoff hockey, right? Like how much does that benefit teams? How much does it hurt the game? How much does it hurt the entertainment value? You're going to wonder how this thing's going to play out, how it's going to look for teams.
I akin it more to baseball than I do the hockey playoffs because it is the regular season. They're definitely, I mean, there was a mini 2-game series with Anaheim. It didn't feel like a playoff game at all. Now that's the soundbite that everyone's going to play after every single game to sound like it because that's kind of the buzzword going around right now. But again, I mean, when we play the San Jose Sharks, okay, maybe that'll feel a little more like the playoffs because those are like actual division rivals. But you have these are made up divisions. I mean, a lot of the opponents are the same, but some of them are different. So it's not always going to feel that way. The Kings maybe will feel a little bit like the playoffs, although the Kings aren't a very good hockey team. So the better teams, it'll feel like that. And otherwise, it'll just feel like a baseball series. Now, if there are fans there, would this be a good thing? It depends. I mean, if you're playing a bad team, maybe not. But we see people fill the Golden Knights stadiums, 18,000 every single game. So, I mean, you're not getting the same people every single night unless you're a season ticket holder, obviously. Even then, most of the people who buy season ticket holders bought it with a group of people and they choose what games they go to. So rarely you're going to have the same faces in there all the time. I think it's good. I see no problem with it. I like these in-division opponents. I think it's unique, something new to NHL. And NHL is always changing the way they do things. I love 3-on-3 hockey and everything like that. They don't change the fundamental of what hockeys are. They just kind of change the things around it. Very different from what baseball is doing. Have at second base to start extra inning. 3-on-3 is still hockey at its core. It's just a little different.
Yeah, so again, the Vegas Golden Knights in action tomorrow against the Arizona Coyote. They will try to continue the season. They're all preseason indications, and the way they look so far on the ice, they are a title contender once again, which we are kind of spoiled in this community by that fact. As vaccines roll out and become available to the public in the weeks, well, who knows? We saw, teams across the country that have admitted stadium. We'll see if Las Vegas, the fans in this city get to enjoy VGK again because it is a spectacle. Hopefully they'll be able to enjoy some of the fruits of those season tickets eventually. But for now, fan lists, the Vegas Golden Knights kicking off the 2021 season on the right foot, 2-0 to start things. We'll see if that continues. But another season, another league. We'll switch gears real quick to another league that is underway and going the fan list route and a little bit of the similarities between the NBA, which we're talking about, and the NHL. And there's some back-to-back games where you're playing the same team in the same city for a couple of games in a row. Not as much as the NHL, but a lot of back-to-backs as well. But the biggest news so far in the NBA has not been on the court.
It felt unbelievable. I hope you can tell by my smile and my play. Just excited and for the opportunity. This is an unbelievable organization from top to bottom. And, for me, all I have to do is just go out there and be the best, James Harden I can be. And, good things will happen.
That, of course, the voice of James Harden, who is not talking about being happy to be in Houston. He was very disgruntled while he finished his days out in Houston, basically demanding a trade through his actions and like a spoiled, privileged NBA brat, obviously. Things went kind of bad in Houston, but he's traded. That was the biggest news of last week. He's been traded to the Brooklyn Nets in a 4-team trade a lot of different details in that. Rockets got Karis LeVert and 3 first-round picks. Ended up dealing LeVert to the Pacers for Victor Oladipo. Side note to that, not really a side note, but important. Karis LeVert out indefinitely after finding a mass in his kidney during a team physical with the Pacers. So the Pacers kind of got the short end of the stick with that deal. Jared Allen and Taurean Prince also part of the deal headed to the Cavaliers. Some other details that are mixed in there, but the biggest thing, the most important thing about that is that the Rockets lose James Harden, acquire James Harden to add him to the mix with KD and Kyrie Irving. Well, whenever Kyrie Irving makes it back. But the big news with James Harden, not just that he was traded, because that was kind of last week's news, but the fact that he dropped an historic 30-point triple-double in his Nets debut, 32 points, 14 assists, and 11 rebounds in that game. The first player in history to have a triple-double, a 30-point triple-double in his debut with the new team. So just a little sneak peek of scary the Brooklyn Nets just got with the addition of James Harden in the East. How does this change the dynamics of the league?
If I can make a, I think we got to get rid of the narrative of the first player to do this thing. It's going too far now. Like, I get a 30-point triple-double is a big deal, but there have been, I think, 8 other players to have triple-doubles in their team debut. It's getting more and more specific every single time. It's the first player on a Tuesday after he had tacos for lunch, and they played a game at 5 p.m. to score 10 points and have 10 rebounds. But no, I mean, obviously it changes a lot of things. And again, we saw it yesterday. I'm not worried about them offensively. We know they're all talented. Golden State, always argued when Kevin Durant went there, there's only one basketball. They're not going to get it done well. They scored pretty well, and they had an historic season because of it. So I think this is a team that'll score around 115, 120 a night. Now, the issue comes in when Kyrie comes back and everything like that defensively. Kyrie is not a ball stopper. We know that. And he's not the worst defender of all time, let's be honest. But James Harden is one of the laziest defenders ever. He's still out of shape. That's not going to happen just because of a trade. Kevin Durant, we know, is all in, but he did have a very devastating injury. To ask him to be the main defender outside of DeAndre Jordan, I think is asking him to do a little too much. I mean, I'm not going to say he's going to re-injure his knee, but certainly you're risking a lot there by putting that Kevin Durant in that position. The other issue, who's going to sacrifice? It's got to be 2 of them, at least. I think Kevin Durant should be the leader of this team. But we also saw this when he went to Golden State. He's like, I'm going to be the leader of this team. He goes there for 2 years. And what do you know? Everyone's still has the microphones on Steph Curry as like kind of the captain. And that upset him so much that he left. Is it going to be the same situation here where James Harden obviously he wants to be the franchise guy. He doesn't want to be the 2. I mean, that's what he was in OKC all those years ago, especially with his teammate. Now, it's going to seem all hunky-dory right now. It's over the top. He has a triple-double. But there are going to be some difficult times because we saw Brooklyn also get out to this massively hot start to the season before quickly, crumbling with Kyrie Irving's situation. And so they're going to have this pseudo lineup right now. And then on top of that, have the pseudo lineup when Kyrie comes back. I'm not sure how they're going to figure it out, but it is exciting basketball to watch, and it is a lot of drama.
Yeah, you touched on one of the biggest things that I took away was Jared Allen. The losing of Jared Allen. He was provided a defensive interior presence. I think while you could bank on DeAndre Jordan maybe to hold it down for a little bit, Jared Allen was definitely a presence in the interior of that defense, which is, you need rim protection, especially when you're looking across the board at Giannis Antetokounmpo, for instance, who's going to get to the basket. I don't think you trust or want Kevin Durant to be the primary defender on him for a whole game. So losing Jared Allen takes away some rim protection. Of course, also looking across to the Western Conference, you got Anthony Davis and LeBron James on that side of things, with Marc Gasol as well as a big in the interior, and of course Harrell. So you're looking at matchups and how things shake up. You're going to need some interior defense. And while Kevin Durant was able to make things happen in Golden State as far as his defensive prowess and protecting the rim, I don't think it's the same situation. Like you said, coming off that Achilles, I don't think you can expect that load from Kevin Durant on both sides of the court. It's also interesting to point out and to note that James Harden is probably the picture-perfect ball handler for the Mike D'Antoni / Steve Nash system, right? And that definitely plays a part in why this could work for James Harden. Where does Kyrie Irving fit in that situation? Because Kyrie Irving had an issue being Robin to LeBron's Batman. He's basically now Alfred to Batman and Robin of Kevin Durant, and then he's the third option right now. He's already disgruntled around basketball for whatever his reasoning is right now. We have no idea what's going on with Kyrie Irving or why he's been absent for the last 6 or 7 games. But when he does come back into the fold, how will he handle being essentially Kevin Love, like what Kevin Love was for the Cavaliers? Will he be able to take that far of a step back to allow James Harden, who is probably the best option as a ball handler in the NBA, period. Like he's unstoppable offensively, right? We understand that. The pick and roll, which we got a glimpse of with him and Kevin Durant, is probably the most unguardable offense that anybody could muster up. How will Kyrie Irving handle being on the sideline watching that, essentially, and spotting up for threes and being more of an off-the-ball player? Who knows? That's going to be interesting to see how Kyrie responds to that.
And there's also another layer to this. They're all three alphas on the court. All of them. They all want the ball to have the last shot. Now, all of them have had made big shots in big moments, but off the court, none of them are alphas. We all know that. I mean, that's the whole narrative around every single one. Kyrie went to Boston to say he can be the guy. Everybody hated him in the locker room. All the young guys who were looking to make these big steps up said they did not want him in there. He obviously leaves in the middle of nowhere. James Harden, the guy who's supposed to be the leader of Houston Rockets, goes out and criticizes his team in front of everybody, in front of the world. And then we just talked about Kevin Durant as well. So when issues do arise, which they will, these guys are going to go behind their backs to go to the media and stuff like that with any issues. They're not going to talk amongst themselves. And Kyrie and KD were best friends, and they're already having issues, apparently, reportedly, about their relationships a little strained because Kevin Durant is all about basketball. Like, that's all that matters to him, which is good. That's the sign of a great player. James Harden and Kyrie, basketball is not the most important thing in their life. And when Kevin Durant has an issue with that, like Kobe did with Shaq, I don't think it's going to end very pretty. And they have to make sure they get this right, which is a lot of pressure on a rookie head coach, of course, because if this falls apart, you just gave away entire draft capital for the next 7 years for the most part. I mean, mostly it's 4 first-round picks, with the pick swaps probably won't come into play. But if they do, that's really bad for you as well. So you have to be sure. And you also got rid of 2 very good young players. I'm a big fan of Karis LeVert, and those were 2 guys who were invested in Brooklyn, and those are the guys who brought Brooklyn to where they were. So I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of issues, but we're going to enjoy it. It's either finals or bust this year alone. That's it.
Yeah, interesting. And obviously, KD cares only about basketball because his hair is always terrible. So that we know that about him. The picks and predictions, obviously, are going to happen when we make such a blockbuster trade. The Woj bomb that shook the earth, basically, with that James Harden confirmation of the trade. But the expectations for this team, I want to shift to the expectations of this team, because you look around the league, especially just focusing on the Eastern Conference, I don't see talent-wise a team that really can contend with them down the stretch if it came to it. Do you think that, I think you said it, but the championship or bust mantra, as early as it is for this team, as young as the season is for everybody, say that championship or bust for this year for the Nets?
It's not championship or bust, but it's finals or bust for me, because we saw LeBron James when he went to Miami and they lost in the finals that year. So I think the expectation of a super team in year one is you're the most talented team in the league, obviously, so you got to get there. Now, if you lose to a more disciplined team because they've had more time to play together, they have a different kind of camaraderie, okay. But going into, like I said, finals this year and next year, they have to win it, because all these guys' deals are going to start coming along. Like, these guys are going to be making more money. Like, their deals end up making more at the back end of their careers. Money gets a lot tighter where you can't even afford a DeAndre Jordan. Guys are coming off of these really cheap contracts. You have to remember, during the height of Golden State, Steph Curry was on a ridiculous deal where he was not making that much money. So, but that is not the case for any of these players. Harden obviously is a super max. Kyrie's making the max. Kevin Durant's taking the max. They're not making any cuts. I think Kevin Durant made like a $5 million cut to make DeAndre Jordan happen, but still, amongst the top dollar echelon, especially when these deals up, he's not expecting less than max 2 now. So it's now or never. I mean, that's the idea. I don't think you can fault the Nets for this trade at all. Right. I mean, you should go for it if you can. How many franchises can say they have like 2 MVPs and a guy who made one of the biggest shots in NBA Finals on the same team? Like, almost never.
Yeah, there's definitely an expectation of excellence. I don't know. Who knows? I'm a fan, obviously, and everybody who listens to the show understands and knows that I think they're still the head and shoulder favorite to win it, even though the trade does change the dynamics in the Eastern Conference. We'll see how happy Giannis is about the team he has around him to go against the Nets. I'm sure that's a collision course in the Eastern Conference Finals. Who knows? But the NBA season well underway, but another season that's almost wrapped up, just about wrapped up, in the heat of things, the NFL. We're going to get into that in the fact this.
Fact this. If you don't like the facts, take your ass back to bed. Fact this.
It is a fact that for the first time in his Hall of Fame career, GOAT career, if I don't say so, but Aaron Rodgers has led the Packers to an NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field for the first time in his career. This comes after a 32-18 victory over the Rams in front of about 8,000 fans in Green Bay. With the way this team looks, the Packers, with the way this team looks from top to bottom and on both sides of the ball, I don't think there's any doubt that they are the favorite to win the NFC regardless of who they face in the championship rounds. What say you, Spence?
Do I think that they'll be favorites? Yes, they will be favorites. They'll probably be 3-point favorites, although I think they could be dogs to the Saints. The bettors love the Saints, but they've been playing up to that. I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't be favorites. They've essentially blown out everybody in the past 5 weeks of football. But when you see Aaron Rodgers and company, he just looks so comfortable. First of all, he has soulless eyes. I don't think there's anything in there but darkness inside. If you really look at him when he's playing football, I think he's hoping that this championship game or potential Super Bowl performance sparks something inside of him so he feels a little bit of life. But no, they are a machine at this current moment.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, 23 of 36, 296, 2 touchdown passes, and 1 on the ground in that win. That gives him, if you count the regular season, 50 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. One of the most efficient quarterbacks in the history of the game. I think his career will go down as he'll probably be the greatest as far as that goes, the interception-touchdown ratio. Is Aaron Rodgers the soulless assassin? Is he the clear MVP of the season? I know the playoffs don't count towards or aren't supposed to count towards MVP votes for the regular season, but with the regular season he did have, is he the clear-cut favorite for the MVP this year?
Yeah, it's not even close to me. I mean, Pat Mahomes had a decent season, but he had more interceptions than you'd probably like out of him. Kind of surprising. And I think that comes along with how erratic we see him make some of the most incredible throws ever, but eventually it's going to catch up to you at some point, making left-handed throws and all this kind of crazy stuff. Not that he was doing that again this season, but no, Aaron Rodgers was efficient. They won because of it. He was the best player on the best team. I mean, the Chiefs did have a better record, if I'm not mistaken, but they didn't look good. I don't think they covered a spread in 10 weeks. They had a few bad losses early in the season, Green Bay, but after that, when they got into playoff mode, that was it. They cut everybody off. The big win against the Titans just shows where they cemented themselves in this year, and they couldn't do it without Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, I don't think any other quarterback other than Pat Mahomes could have had the season that he did.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. I think Aaron Rodgers' leadership in his 36 years of age at that age is absolutely phenomenal. 32-18 victory against the number 1 Rams defense was probably very impressive and would have been more impressive, unfortunately, if Aaron Donald's health did not fail him down the stretch. Obviously, dealing with injured wrist, Aaron Donald was limited. Going into the game, Sean McVay said that he wouldn't be limited. There's no limitations on his snaps, and he was good to go. But the proof was in the pudding. Aaron Donald, who usually plays about 85% of the defensive snaps for the Rams, only played 65%, and his presence was sorely missed as the Packers pretty much ran the ball at will. There was no realistic pass rush on Aaron Rodgers. Didn't see the ground. Was rarely hurried. So Aaron Donald's presence is what makes defense the number 1 defense in the league. And I think missing him, although the Packers, I think, were the better team regardless, I think the game would have been more interesting, more close if you had that dynamic of the other Aaron at play with the Rams.
Yeah, and the Packers just don't care at the end of the day. I mean, they ran the ball, I think, more times than they passed in the first half, which is they're just willing to change their style. And if they find something that they feel is weak, and that speaks to the head coach, obviously, things would be different with Aaron Donald. I don't think they would have had nearly as much run success, so that's part of it. But Aaron Rodgers is able to get the ball out so fast, and he does it every single time, consistently. So eventually the defense starts to creep up. Okay, here we go. He's going to pass the ball quickly, and then he ends the game with this long touchdown pass that he just kind of slings off to the side like it's nothing, because the safeties were starting again to go getting closer and closer because they're trying to pick off those passes. But he sees it. I mean, you could see during the play that was inaudible. That touchdown pass he had. He's like, look where they're at. Just go forward. I know how fast you are. And he found him immediately. It was so easy.
Yeah, so the game within the game, Aaron Rodgers is the master of it. He and his coach have definitely got that chemistry. Some shakiness in the first year, even though they had a great season last year as well. But they've definitely figured something out. And part of the reason they figured something out is because Davante Adams is one of the best at getting open and being available. I anticipated, and everybody anticipated, the matchup between Jalen Ramsey, who's arguably the best cornerback in the league right now, and Davante Adams. Heavily anticipated matchup. The hype, though, was a little bit better than the actual thing. They only, I think, lined up against each other, I think, 3 times, actually man-to-man coverage. One, Davante Adams went motion for the short touchdown, and the other 2 times, Davante Adams won on some quick slant routes with Aaron Rodgers getting the ball out quick. So that matchup left something to be desired.
Well, that's just football. I mean, the way defensive schemes work, there's too many guys on the field. Now in basketball, it's 5-on-5. You play the same position, you're probably going to be matchup against that guy. Or even if you play like a position up or down for me, if you're small forward, you might guard a shooting guard or power at some point in the game. But in football, I mean, it's something that we would like to see. But I mean, this is an NFL street, unfortunately. Like, they're going to have to find ways to do it. Now, during that touchdown, he was pretty upset with his defense. So I don't think the game plan was exactly how he would have called it. But when you're in the prime of your career and you don't feel like you're probably being utilized the most, it's going to be a little frustrating. And he took it out on the defensive coordinator yesterday. If you saw that, it's just not how it's going to work.
Yeah, and I think he's in the prime of his career. Aaron Donald's in the prime of his career, one of the most dominant forces. So kind of breaks your heart to see him eliminated that way, especially because he wasn't able to contribute the way he would have wanted late in that game and be the impactful player that he is. On the other side of things, obviously, we talked about the NFC. One half of that championship matchup is set with the Packers waiting for the winner between the Bucs and the Saints. But the Bills on the AFC side outlasted the Ravens for a 17-3 win, an ugly win, if you ask me. It's just an ugly game, defensive game. The win and the conditions there in Buffalo played a factor. But the Bills come out on top 17-3, the biggest play of the game. We'll talk about that later, but the Buffalo Bills making history in advancing to the AFC Championship for the first time in 27 years. It's crazy to think that a team has gone that long without making it this far. It seems like they're the team of destiny because of the milestones they've made along the way. I know it's crazy out there in Buffalo, one of the biggest and most enthusiastic fan bases, kind of built up during that 4 Super Bowl loss era for the Bills. But Bills Mafia is in full rage over what the Buffalo Bills have been able to do this season. But the biggest play of this divisional game was Taron Johnson's pick six, 101 yards, tying the longest pick six in NFL postseason history. Taron Johnson, that play changed the whole feel of this game because it looked like it was going to be an ugly, to-the-wire, back-and-forth game with Baltimore threatening to score and tie things up there. But Lamar Jackson's first interception thrown in the red zone of his career, 49 touchdowns, first interception thrown in the red zone, turns out to be pretty much the dagger in the ball game, with Taron Johnson taking it 101 yards the other way for the touchdown and pretty much putting the ice on the cake for the Bills to advance to the AFC Championship.
Yeah, I just don't believe in Lamar Jackson. I've been saying it all season. Now, is he a terrible quarterback? No, it's not a terrible quarterback. But if you're going to be successful in the playoffs, you can have a mobile quarterback. Colin Kaepernick made it to the Super Bowl, right? But you have to be somewhat of an accurate passer. I mean, he was just off a lot of the times, and you cannot give a turnover in the red zone. Now, I know that was the first of his career, but it doesn't really matter when you throw it, your first one, right? As long as it's not in a divisional playoff game. He did use his legs quite a bit, but he's just missing too much. He has to develop. I feel like he's getting worse, honestly, as time goes on. The deep ball is getting better, but those intermediate passes, and I'm seeing the same thing out of Justin Fields. These guys have to develop their game if they want to take it to the next level, because the Ravens lost that game because of Lamar Jackson. There's no other way. There's no other way about it. Their defense did about as good as you could against Buffalo, who also will just not change the way they play football. Like, basically antithesis of what the Packers are doing as pass. But when it comes to Lamar Jackson, I don't know. I mean, I think he is dedicated to his craft, but he's got to dedicate it in a different way.
So I'm gonna push back a little bit. I don't disagree that he needs to work on being a pocket passer. I think that dynamic in his game needs to elevate if he's going to get over the hump, so to speak. But I also will kind of say that this is not the way that the team has been built or they have been constructed. They are not a drop back, beat you from the pocket team. Lamar Jackson, maybe not the best pocket passer as a quarterback, but the team and in its whole is not built to drop back and pass. They have 3 running backs who share the load. They have a host of tight ends. Their tight end has been a leading receiver for the past 3 seasons, I believe, with Andrews. They have nobody that can create separation on any intermediate routes. And then on top of that, Lamar Jackson just isn't built to make it better. So I think the problem that the Ravens have run in the past couple of seasons is that they get themselves into situations where they're not being themselves when it matters the most. In this playoff game last season against the Titans, where they were just off schedule, got down early, and had to throw to try to even have a chance, that's not who they want to be. That's not who they are. I think Lamar Jackson, that interception, he wants it back, absolutely. But I think up until that point, he was having a solid game against a good Bills team, and they were in the game, like you said, winning it with defense, trying to establish a run that hadn't really fully asserted their dominance in the way that they had all season. But I think Lamar Jackson can get it done if he is who he is. Granted, they built a roster to make sure that Lamar Jackson can be who he is. It's just that they haven't been that when it matters the most. And like you said, the worst possible time for him to throw an interception in the red zone is in the AFC playoffs with the game on the line.
No, I think you have a great point there in the way the offense is run. It looks like the Lynn Bowden-led Kentucky Wildcats in college football. I mean, sets and everything like that. I don't like this little pistol formation they have going on them. Let them get under center. Let them get under shotgun. Running the ball like in a shotgun situation when the defense is spread out and he can go, I think that'll be better for him than if they're like, I think this guy might run, or I think they're going to do some sort of like obvious play action, something like that. They're going to try to get in the ball. You can read that. But when it's an unplanned run, I mean, we saw that with Michael Vick throughout his career. But when it comes to the playoffs, they're gonna close in on these run plays, and like it's easier, way easier in the regular season is when you start playing the top defenses in the NFL, who are all looking to go to the Super Bowl. They know you're going to try to do these things, and that's what they did throughout the entire game. That's how they scored 3 points.
Yeah, and absolutely. The Bills sold out to stop the run, but the Bills, I think, made a mistake, and I hope this is not an omen of things to come for the Bills, because I don't think this is the right move yet. While Josh Allen is a franchise player, he is definitely a game changer, a playmaker, a future great in this game. I think he's going to have, I should say, go on to have a Hall of Fame career, and he's one of the best talents at quarterback right now that we have in the league. But 0 rushing attempts in the first quarter, 0 design run calls for the Bills in the first quarter of a weather-impacted game. Just not the right way to approach winning games late in the season. I think the Baltimore Ravens maybe let you off the hook, especially Justin Tucker with 2 missed field goals, which is just uncharacteristic of him. I mean, his face reaction after those missed field goals said it all. But the idea that the Bills were so one-dimensional on purpose during this game was kind of scary as far as what they intend to do in the AFC Championship game. Because that's not going to cut it against the Chiefs. And it may not even cut it against the Browns, who are a more efficient and more complete offense than the Baltimore Ravens are as far as putting points on the board and their offensive prowess. So is that a bad omen that the Bills are willing to put this all on Josh Allen's shoulders so early in his career?
I don't know if it's necessarily like just putting on Josh Allen, but you got to mix it up a little bit. You can't become so predictable, and that's really the problem. But no one's been able to stop them yet just so far. I don't know if the Chiefs can, but they do have that Super Bowl mentality, like they just won it. So you probably don't want to pass the ball every single time. They might figure it out because you got a smart coach and Andy Reid on the other side. I almost feel like it would be better for them to play the Chiefs than the Browns, as crazy as that sounds, because the Browns are going to try to control the clock. And if you're going to get into a gunfight, the Chiefs defense is terrible. It's pretty darn bad, I would say. It's a bottom half, level defense. So I think Stephon Diggs would have a little bit of success. But still, you guys have to be willing to change your philosophies. I mean, that's how Green Bay dominated their game. If they played Green Bay and they tried to pass the ball every time, they would get crushed, just like the LA Rams.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Josh Allen's not there yet. I think as great as he is, as much as I trust his arm, I don't think he's there as a leader. I think he's avoided the big mistakes so far this playoff round, although he did have a fumble that could have cost him the game against the Colts in the first round in a wildcard weekend. But I don't know if it's the best strategy to make it all about Josh Allen. Like you said, I do agree with this. If you're going to go into a shootout and be that team, it's better to do it against the Chiefs than against the Browns, because the Browns have the ability with Chubb and Hunt to really ice a game with their run game and to be that run time of possession team and really keep Josh Allen on the sideline, where those quick 3 and outs, those drives where they just throw the ball 3 times and no time waste off a clock, they come back to hurt you against a team like the Browns. So matchup wise, it is a little bit kind of strange to say that the Browns might be a worse matchup for the Bills, but I think a shootout game is your best chance against the Chiefs. The Chiefs and the Browns are in action, so we'll find out which one of those teams will advance. They got the afternoon game, the early game. The Browns and the Chiefs will kick things off. The Browns, obviously, I think maybe the surprise that they're here. I think that, first of all, their season and the way their season went was probably a surprise, the most surprising thing. But then we look at the fact that they had 4 players, their head coach, missing in action for the first round against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had the hottest start to the season, 11-0. For them to go into Pittsburgh and handle business the way they did against the Steelers, I think everybody's pretty shocked that this is the matchup coming in this week. I think it's fair to say that it's a surprising matchup to even say the Browns are in the divisional round against the Chiefs this year.
Yeah, when you play divisional games, I think you're always leave it open for some really weird stuff to happen. And I just think the Steelers carried themselves wrong all season. I mean, they were so cocky, the dancing, the TikToks. I mean, it was on national stage. They wanted to say that they were the greatest in the world. So when you do that, you put a target on your back. When you do that against a team that hates you because you play them twice a year, you're also leaving yourself open. Now, the other issue, when you have an old Ben Roethlisberger who looks like his body is actively falling, if he gets tackled, I mean, he might just shatter in two. I mean, that's another issue, and we saw that. And they had no run game this season, and then he was just off. He just couldn't throw the deep ball. They're going to end up getting after like a card like that, but they're going to have to figure something out because we know their defense is ready to make some sort of run. That's how good their defense is. But if you have the other side of the ball,
if Ben Roethlisberger does come back next year, he may be the first active player to be featured in an Icy Hot ad, one of those Copper Fit commercials. He might be playing a game with Brett Favre in a Copper Fit commercial because his body is literally failing him before our eyes on national television. Watching him run out onto the field before the first snap in that Cleveland Browns game, it just looked like he was in pain. Like he did not look comfortable. He did not look able, in my opinion, to actually do what he needs to play in an NFL game, especially when the franchise is still putting the weight of the game on his shoulders. I don't think it's right for him to continue playing. I don't think Ben Roethlisberger is the answer going forward for the Steelers. They need to dump him, move on, get things going. And Ben Roethlisberger needs to have a real look in the mirror and say, I can't do this anymore. I just can't, because I think that ultimately was the downfall of the Steelers, leaning on Ben Roethlisberger one too many times and not being able to come through. So we'll see. The Browns and the Chiefs again at noon, but the Bucs and the Saints, which is the highlight of the playoffs, this matchup is one that is historic. First, Father Time defeats the third person, and because Drew Brees and Tom Brady are ancient as far as they're dinosaurs in the game of football, both in their 40s and both still performing at a high level. This matchup, highly anticipated. I think at the Saints, inside the dome, weather conditions won't be a factor. Both of these players pretty much have their full set of tools, although Mike Evans is a little bit banged up for the Bucs, but he's going to go. How do you see this game shaking down between the Bucs and the Saints?
I don't know. This is a hard place for me because I call both these quarterbacks noodle arms. One's Rigatoni and the other one's Tortellini, as far as I'm concerned. So this far into the season, it's so weird to say that Drew Brees may have benefited from his injury, being that he didn't use those extra weeks with his arm. Now, would he have preferred to break his ribs? Probably not, but still, he is a little more fresher. But the further you go into the playoffs, the worse it's going to get. They played the Bears in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, you don't really have to try that hard at all. You got to worry about Khalil Mack, but once you take that care of that, I mean, we saw how much success they had. Michael Thomas, I think, is going to be back for this game, so I mean, that changes the dynamic. But I just love this connection. Well, I don't love it, but the connection between Antonio Brown and Tom Brady is gaining momentum every single week. Now, the Saints defense has been playing well, but when you have a quarterback and a receiver, especially a receiver, like a Hall of Fame level receiver on the same page, doesn't really matter what kind of play call you're going to do. That guy's going to find his way open. And if they just focus all their energy on Antonio Brown, while they just kind of have two other weapons that are also Hall of Fame caliber players, they're going to have a hard time stopping them. Now, has Tampa Bay's defense been great? No, it has not at all. I mean, they've been spotty. It's probably the best way to describe it. So it's either, to me, Alvin Kamara is going to have like a historic game, or he's just not going to play well at all. That's kind of how we felt about Derrick Henry going into that matchup into the playoffs. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. This is going to be such an interesting game because I just feel like it's going to be a blowout, but I don't know who's going to win this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because the Saints are missing a dynamic with Taysom Hill being out. I think they're getting most of their players back, but Taysom Hill is a crucial part of their offense, short yardage situations, red zone situation. He changes the dynamic for any defense going against them. Also, to say that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on their defense have their full linebacking core back. They'll be available for this game. They weren't available against the Redskins. So having that unit, which I think is one of the best linebacking cores in all of football right now, that second level back intact, I think helps the Bucs on defense because, like you said, they struggled also against the Washington football team, giving up 23 points to some guy named Heineke. Right? Like who saw that coming in the first round in the wild card round? So neither team, while they're talented on paper, has produced at the level that we anticipated or expect from them or have seen from them throughout the history of these quarterbacks. So it's going to be interesting. You don't really know which team's going to show up. You don't know who's going to click, who's going to have that breakaway game. Like you said, Alvin Kamara is probably the easiest mismatch for any offense. A check down that's that explosive and able to make that much of an impact. It's always interesting. So the Saints have a chance. The Bucs have a chance. But I also say neither team is playing well enough. And the Green Bay Packers are playing so much better than the rest of the NFL right now. And they're the more complete team, I think, top to bottom than anybody. I don't think either one of these championship in Lambeau at that has a chance to beat and knock off the Packers at home.
Yeah, but you got Tommy B, and I'm the one who criticizes him the most. But still, throughout my entire lifetime, this is the guy who I said can't do it, getting too old. And then he just does it every single time. I think Tom Brady has a much better chance than Drew Brees. Drew Brees has only done it once. Now we know he's the regular season James Harden, the greatest, of all time, whatever you want to call it stat-wise. But again, he's Super Bowl once. That was a long time ago. Tom Brady was just in the Super Bowl not that long ago. If anybody can get it done against Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be him, whether or not we want to admit that or not.
Yeah, I think Bruce Arians coming around and kind of meeting Tom Brady halfway late in the season. I think also getting Ronald Jones back this week adds that run game, a little bit more of a run game threat to the Buccaneers offense. Like you said, I think I agree with you. Tom Brady does have the best chance, especially playing out there in the cold. Anybody who knows playing in the cold, it'll be Tom Brady. Drew Brees, foreign territory there. He's an indoor quarterback. He has been for his entire career. So I agree there. I think the Bucs have the best chance to knock off the Packers if it comes down to that. We'll see some great football action the second half of the divisional round of the NFL playoffs this afternoon. It'd be exciting football to watch. Come on down to Kickers Gaming and Sports Bar to watch it if you are in the area. Definitely a cool place to enjoy the games, see who the Packers are going to face. If you're not a Packer fan, it's okay. You're still welcome. But I would say this is a Packer bar, and I love it. As a Green Bay Packer fan, it's awesome. So come on down to Kickers Gaming and Sports Bar on 931 Las Vegas Boulevard North if you're interested in watching the game this afternoon. All right. Switching gears to some teams. It's exciting and fun to talk about the playoffs, but unfortunately, the home team for Las Vegas in the NFL is not in that conversation. But they are in the conversation in the news. They were last week for some other reasons. Mark Davis, the owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, now is the owner of another Las Vegas professional team. He purchased the Las Vegas Aces from the MGM Resorts International. He said in a quote, "I am excited to announce that I've entered into an agreement to purchase the Las Vegas franchise in the WNBA," of course, referring to the Aces. He said he'd have more to say after it is approved by the Board of Governors. And of course, there's a lot of logistics that go on behind the scenes, and I'm sure he is enthusiastic. Of course, according to WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, Mark Davis has always been a huge supporter of the WNBA. And in his short time as the owner of the Las Vegas Raiders now, he did show that when he purchased 1,600 tickets to Las Vegas Aces games in the 2019 season and distributed those to kids in the community to get them a chance to be exposed to the WNBA, which is huge. He's an advocate, obviously, through his actions. Be interesting to see what he does as the owner, how things change between the dynamic professional sports with him basically getting a monopoly, getting a head start on a monopoly in the sports world in Las Vegas. Maybe he'll be involved with the expansion team that's on its way in the NBA as well. Who knows? Mark Davis making some news for the Las Vegas Raiders outside of football. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice. I went to almost every home game in the Aces' first season here in Vegas, and he did go to quite a few games. He's a fan of the sport, which is nice. I think the game needs more fans of the sport. If it can grow. Look, it's never going to be as big as the NBA, but I don't think that's the point. We saw the Big Three League be successful, and I think the WNBA can be too. And LeBron James is reportedly interested in acquiring the Atlanta Dream. So there is a little bit of buzz around the sport, but they're going to have to inject a lot of juice into it because it's full. Announcers think everything's peachy. Their town thinks everything's all hunky dory. So they're going to have to change the way they do business. And changing owners is a good start, but it's not going to. There's still, if this is the only thing the WNBA has going for it going through the season, they're going to have another unsuccessful season, whatever that means. So they're going to have to change the presentation, all that kind of stuff. But maybe someone like Mark Davis will be able to add a little bit of pizzazz to it.
Yeah, I think drama is a thing that all consumers want. Whether there's controversy of opinion or thought or controversy on the screen, we watch reality TV. For God's sake, the Kardashians are celebrities strictly off of controversy. So I think that element definitely plays into part. And look at what we're talking about with James Harden earlier, that controversy of him in Houston wanting out, wanting to move teams, the controversy of other players in the NBA that make them interesting, I think is an element that I think the WNBA is missing. While it is great, clean, and wholesome, and absolutely about the game, and that's it, the purity of the game, I think it adds entertainment value to have that dynamic. And like you said, the Raiders have been one of those franchises, and ownership has been a part of that. They've taken on the mystique and the ownership of being kind of the grimy black and silver team that isn't afraid to go there with you, the fan base as well as the team on the field. So maybe Mark Davis brings some of that and infuses that within the advertising or whatever media relationship between the Aces and the rest of the world. But this SB with C, of course, and obviously with Spence, who has a strong opinion about the Raiders. It's a shame we didn't get to do this during the actual season, so we can talk about how Derek Carr is the greatest quarterback the Raiders have ever seen, and we can go back and forth about that. But it is the offseason, so we're looking forward to what the Raiders have done already to get the offseason kicked off. They hired Gus Bradley as a defensive coordinator. Of course, defense was the hot topic for the Raiders all season long, firing defensive coordinator during the season, now hiring Gus Bradley, who is probably most noted as being the defensive coordinator during the Legion of Boom era in Seattle and being kind of the architect of that defense. He's moved on since, and his most recent stop was with the Los Angeles Chargers, where they were the number 10 overall defense in the NFL this past season. So obviously an improvement over where the Raiders finished, which was number 30 overall in defense. So you can't go wrong there. He said in a quote that his mission is to get things right up front and then build in everywhere else. Talking defense, obviously stopping the run was an issue, so getting right up front, you can't go wrong there. But is that all he has to do? Like, what other spots can he, as a defensive coordinator, actually impact with his scheme, with the personality?
I mean, they could have hired Bush badly for all I could care. Let me give you a list of names, and I'll tell you, as long as these guys still get significant minutes for the Raiders, it doesn't matter who they hire. As long as these guys are playing for the Raiders, they will never make the playoffs. Because keep in mind, this is a division with the Chiefs and the LA been coming. So Cleveland Farrell, Jonathan Abrams, Malik Collins, Jonathan Hankins, Nicholas Morrow, Isaiah Johnson, and Daryl Morley. As long as those guys are still on the defense playing significant minutes, this team will never get close. They will never get over 8 wins, mind you. Wow. A single one of those guys is starting on the team, they will not make the playoffs. They all have to go.
Spence the Wiz coming in hot. I can't disagree. That the personnel is the biggest issue right now facing the Raiders defensively. I think you can scheme up however you want to. You can have the perfect coverage dialed up, but if Jonathan Abrams is not where he's supposed to be, you're going to have game-winning touchdown thrown to Travis Kelce from 30 yards out, right? That's something that we're going to obviously have to work on as a personnel. I noticed that you didn't say Damon Arnett because he was one of the picks, I think, that got some controversy as far as his ability in the pro level. Obviously, coming out of Ohio State, they do put DBs in the NFL. Their success, who knows how much, but the Raiders and him, he hasn't been available for most of the year because of injury, so we really haven't gotten a chance to see what he could be. But I think he's one of the more competitive in the secondary. Is he a piece that you see the Raiders keeping and kind of having to maybe age and grow and develop the secondary with?
Well, look, Mike Mayock has no idea what he's doing. He's reached on every single one of his draft picks every single time without doubt, unless you go to the 4th round. He always takes one guy in the late round that I wanted. I wanted Tanner Muse last year from Clemson. He took him. I liked Max Crosby. He took him. Okay. Well, I'm not going to give him a medal for that because in the first 3 rounds, if you consistently mess up every single time. Now, Damon Arnett is a top 5 tackling cornerback in the entire NFL already, in my opinion. So I think you can work with that. He got burned a lot, but he was a rookie. He was injured a lot. But when you have the fundamentals of tackling as a cornerback, I think that'll take you really far. So I'm going to wait to see my opinion on him. They should have never taken him. He was never supposed to go in the 1st round anyways. But still, I'll reserve my judgment for at least one more year.
Yeah, Mike Mayock, obviously the pressure is on. He's on the hot seat. Gruden certainly isn't. He's there to stay basically for the foreseeable future in Las Vegas as the head coach of the Raiders. So the pressure falls on the GM, who's ever pulling the strings behind the scenes, and that's Mike Mayock right now. Like you said, his draft picks have been head scratchers at best. I think for me, the kind of biggest question was taking Henry Ruggs over Jerry Jeudy, best available wide receiver, clearly. In my opinion, Jerry Jeudy, and he took Henry Ruggs. Didn't pan out for the Raiders this season in his rookie campaign, and now I'm interested to see what he does with the number 16 pick. I think everybody who is a fan of the Raiders would agree that if anything is drafted in this draft other than defense, Mike Mayock should be gone.
It doesn't matter where the Raiders draft. If this guy is drafting for the Raiders, plain and simple, they're going to reach for somebody, and he's not going to be good. That's it. That's all I can. Until you can show me otherwise, that's it. That's all I'm going to believe. I'm going to do, this is what I do. I do 4 rounds of scouting for the NFL draft, so I kind of know like who's going to be taken in them. I'm going to choose the guy who the Raiders should pick, which was Patrick Queen this year, and they're not going to take him. I'm going to be disappointed. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
I can't wait for the show after the draft so we can talk about how the Raiders
sick
messed
when
it up.
They took Henry. I was sick.
We can go at it again because I love Spence's takes on the Las Vegas Raiders. He's a passionate fan, as we all are in the Las Vegas community. But that wraps it up for SMBFC. Now on to our pick segment. Brian has texted me from Costa Rica. He's getting ready to get on a surfboard and go test the waters. Hopefully he doesn't get eaten by a shark, but he has texted me with his pick. He is going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for his pick. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Dino Cotton is picking the Titans. That's all he picked all season. Even though the Titans have been eliminated from contention already, he's picking the Titans. But I'm going to go ahead and go against Brian here and go with the Saints because they have the D line to rattle Tom Brady and the defense to at least contain the big play threat of AB. I think the Saints win at home against the Bucs.
Give me the Browns. That spread is way too much. 9.5 is too much.
If you take that to the casinos, you'd probably be making out with a lot of money
Browns
right
money
now.
line. Let's go, baby.
Browns money line. I like it. We're out of time from Kickers Gaming and Sports Bar. This has been Out of Line. I'd like to thank, of course, Spencer Wiz-Ostrowski. We miss you, Brian, in Costa Rica. Thank you, Dino Damon Cotton, back in the studios. We are here next Sunday, same time, same place, 8 to 9 a.m., Out of Line on Fox LV. This has been Caleb Herring. Thank you for tuning in. See you next week.